The movie begins by introducing us to young Ki-soo, a Korean scientist who is conducting a daring experiment. He's trying to bring his deceased daughter back to life by injecting a mysterious substance into her lifeless body. At the same time, the police, aware of Ki-soo's crazy experiment, and decide to intervene. They rush into the experiment room, urging Ki-soo to stop and release his daughter's body. But Ki-soo is stubborn and ignores their warnings, continuing his experiment. As a result, he gets arrested. A few moments later, a massive earthquake strikes Seoul. Skyscrapers crumble, and even the laboratory, where Ki-soo was conducting his experiment, is not spared. Fast forward 3 years, and Seoul has turned into a desolate wasteland. The city is in ruins, and finding clean water and food is a daily struggle. Among the survivors is a young man named Choi Ji-won, who has adapted to this harsh new world. He hunts for food using a bow and arrow, and one day, he spots a large crocodile nearby. Ji-won takes careful aim and manages to immobilize the crocodile. However, the crocodile starts moving again and begins chasing him. Ji-won seeks refuge in a nearby car and is saved by his foster uncle, Nam-sun, who skillfully beheads the giant crocodile with a machete. Following the devastating earthquake, a girl named Hun Soo-na and her grandmother, Yeon-soo, have made their home in Bus District, a small settlement where survivors have gathered. They lead a simple life in their small house. One day, Yeon-soo informs Soo-na that Nam-sun and his nephew are selling the prey they've hunted at the local market. Excited, Soo-na suggests they go to the market to buy some of Nam-sun's fresh catch. When they arrive at the bustling Bus District market, they see a crowd of people lining up to get their hands on the meat sold by Nam-sun and Ji-won. In this new world, traditional currency is no longer in use, so people have adopted a barter system for trade. Everyone in the crew has brought valuable items to exchange for a portion of the hunted meat. One woman offers jewelry, but Nam-sun declines as he has no use for it, and instead, he's willing to trade a snake he caught. Shortly thereafter, Soo-na and Yeon-soo approach with a scarf, hoping to exchange it for some of the crocodile meat that's up for sale. Recognizing each other and grateful for the past help they'd received, Nam-sun and Ji-won generously give them several pieces of crocodile meat. Soo-na even begins to consider Nam-sun and Ji-won as her brothers due to their kind actions. At the same time, a gang led by Eun Pal-ji arrives in Bus District with news that their boss, Tiger, is searching for someone in the area. Eun Pal-ji attempts to take Soo-na, but Ji-won, who secretly harbors feelings for her, steps in to defend her. However, Ji-won is outnumbered and overpowered by the gang members. Witnessing this, Nam-sun intervenes and uses his strength to defeat all the gangsters with his bare hands. After defeating the gang, Nam-sun interrogates Eun Pal-ji to find out who had sent them. During the confrontation, Nam-sun discovers a bottle of clean water in Eun Pal-ji's pocket, which surprises him because clean water is a rare commodity. Eun Pal-ji explains that he received the water from Tiger. Nam-sun decides to let Eun Pal-ji go, but instructs him to deliver a message to Tiger, informing him of their defeat. Upon hearing Nam-sun's name, Eun Pal-ji and his gang are shocked and flee in fear, as they never expected to be defeated by a fighter as renowned as Nam-sun. Once the gangsters have left, Nam-sun tends to Ji-won's injuries. Meanwhile, the woman with jewelry watches in admiration as Nam-sun courageously defeated the gang members. Sometime later, Nam-sun and Ji-won decided to head back to their own home, which wasn't too far from Soo-na's house. As they passed by Soo-na's place, they noticed a woman named Yeon-nam accompanied by well-dressed individuals. Yeon-nam offered Soo-na and her family a special apartment for teenagers and their families, complete with daily meals and various amenities. Nam-sun thought it would be a good idea for Soo-na to accept this offer, especially for Yeon-soo's well-being due to her age and frailty. With Nam-sun's advice, Soo-na eventually agreed to Yeon-nam's proposal. Although saddened by Soo-na's departure, Ji-won promised to visit her frequently in the new apartment. As a parting gift, Ji-won gave Soo-na a knitted hat, and Soo-na gave Ji-won one of her drawings. That night, Ji-won hung Soo-na's artwork in his room, reflecting on her move with Yeon-nam. Meanwhile, Num's son found himself unable to sleep, looking at a photo of a young girl in his room. Realizing that G1 was still awake, Num's son invited his nephew for a hunting trip. Meanwhile, under the guidance of Yongnam, Suna, and Yansu embarked on a journey to the special teenage apartment, along with several other people who had chosen to stay there. As they walked through a grassy field, a girl named Lee Juyi approached Suna and introduced herself. When Juyi learned that Suna was the same age as her, she was thrilled and invited Suna to be friends. After traveling for some time, Yansu and an elderly man grew tired, prompting Yongnam to instruct her subordinates to take them to the clinic for immediate treatment. Suna, concerned for her grandmother's condition, asked for permission to accompany her, but Yongnam declined, assuring Suna that they would be reunited with Yansu after reaching the apartment. With Suna persuaded, Yongnam led the group to continue their journey until they reached the designated pickup location. However, Yansu and the elderly man were secretly killed by two of Yongnam's henchmen. Surprisingly, G1 and Num's son witnessed the murder while they were hunting nearby and attempted to intervene. Strangely, even after G1 and Num's son killed the two men, they came back to life like unkillable zombies. Facing this bizarre situation, Num's son and his nephew wondered how these seemingly dead attackers could return to life. Just as Num's son was getting overwhelmed by the zombie-like assailants, a woman named Lee Eun-ho came to his rescue by beheading one of them who was about to attack Num's son. After ensuring the situation was under control, Num's son and G1 promptly buried Yansu. The following morning, Num's son and G1 approached Eun-ho, who was still at the scene of the previous night's attack, and inquired about her identity. Meanwhile, Suna had already boarded a vehicle with Juyi and the others on their way to the apartment. Back with Eun-ho, she introduced herself to Num's son and G1 as a member of the South Korean Air Force. She explained that after the devastating earthquake a few years ago, her unit had discovered an apartment, which they converted into a shelter for survivors. Ki-soo later arrived, claiming to be a doctor, and was allowed to stay. However, Eun-ho and her subordinates eventually uncovered Ki-soo's sinister experiments on military personnel. When she reported this to her superior, Sergeant Kwon, he defended Ki-soo and ordered her capture, leading Eun-ho to flee. After sharing her story, Eun-ho sought Num's son's assistance in rescuing her subordinates, who were still at the apartment. On the other hand, Suna and her group had arrived at the apartment, where they received a warm welcome from the residents. Even Ki-soo greeted them, referring to the place as their new home. As a gesture of hospitality, Ki-soo offered drinks to Suna and the others before showing them to their respective rooms. Upon entering her room, Suna couldn't believe the spacious and well-equipped accommodations, a stark contrast to the hardships she had experienced in her district. Back with Num's son, G1, and Eun-ho, when Num's son noticed Eun-ho's water bottle, it reminded him of Eun Palji's bottle, which had been obtained from Tiger. Therefore, Num's son intended to meet with Tiger to uncover how the gangsters had managed to acquire clean water. In their headquarters, Tiger observed a brawl between his henchmen and a rival gang from another area. Just then, Num's son, accompanied by G1 and Eun-ho, confronted Tiger. Sensing a challenge, Tiger and his gang attacked the newcomers. Through his martial skills, Num's son defeated all the gang members, including Tiger himself. Meanwhile, at the apartment, Suna approached Kwon and inquired about Yansu's whereabouts, leaving the surgeon unsure of how to respond. Yongnam, who had overheard Suna's question, informed her that Yansu was still at the clinic receiving medical care. Shortly after, all the new apartment residents gathered for an orientation session. Teenagers like Suna and Juyi were to attend educational classes, while others, such as Juyi's parents, were assigned the task of purifying the apartment's water supply. Back at the gangsters' hideout, Num's son continued to interrogate Tiger's henchmen, who had regained consciousness, but they refused to provide information about the clean water. Growing frustrated, Num's son resorted to further force, including confronting Tiger himself. Finally, Tiger confessed that they obtained the clean water by selling teenagers to a military group based in an apartment. Meanwhile, Su-na and Ju-yi arrived in their new classroom, where Yang-num, their teacher, asked them to introduce themselves to their classmates. Su-na began to notice the peculiar behavior of the students and grew suspicious about hidden secrets in their new home. Before class began, Ki-soo, accompanied by soldiers, entered and emphasized the importance of drinking water for health. He distributed water bottles to all the students and urged them to drink. Su-na took the opportunity to inquire about her grandmother, who had not yet joined them in the apartment. Ki-soo explained that Yeon-soo still required intensive care at the clinic and would remain there for several more days. With mounting inconsistencies in the apartment, that night, Su-na covertly explored various rooms to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, in the workers' area, Ju-yi's parents attempted to defy the guards, who prevented them from seeing their daughter. Ki-soo, alerted by the disturbance, entered the workers' quarters and ordered his henchmen to escort Ju-yi's parents to his laboratory. At the same time, Su-na entered Ki-soo's room, where she stumbled upon the doctor's diary. It contained notes detailing experiments aimed at reviving humans. As Su-na read through Ki-soo's writings, her suspicions intensified, believing that the apartment served as a site for the doctor's crazy experiments. To confirm her suspicions, she ventured into other rooms connected to Ki-soo's quarters and stumbled upon Ju-yi, who lay unconscious, having been used as an experiment by the doctor. Just as Su-na contemplated rescuing Ju-yi, Ki-soo abruptly returned with Ju-yi's parents, prompting Su-na to hide in panic. When Ju-yi's parents entered the experimental room, they were horrified to find a headless girl inside a box, her heart still beating. Nearby, their daughter lay unconscious, having been subjected to Ki-soo's experiments. Seeing what had been done to their child, Ju-yi's parents grew increasingly furious with Ki-soo for using their daughter in such a way. Suddenly, Ju-yi began convulsing, sending Ki-soo into a panic as he checked the experiment's results on a monitor. Sadly, Ki-soo's experiment on Ju-yi failed, resulting in her losing her life. Enraged by the doctor's actions, Ju-yi's parents confronted him, but Ki-soo showed no remorse and ultimately killed them both. Su-na, hidden nearby, began to feel terrified and tried not to make a sound, but Ki-soo eventually discovered her. Meanwhile, Num-sun, upon learning of Ki-soo's wicked experiments, devised a plan to rescue everyone targeted by the doctor, including Su-na. Eun-ho informed him that the apartment was heavily guarded by soldiers. Num-sun explained that they would use Tiger to gain easy access to the apartment. The following morning, Num-sun put his plan into action, bringing Tiger with him to convince the guards to let them in. When the guards refused to open the gate, Num-sun accelerated his car at high speed, crashing through the entrance of the apartment. Ji-won and Eun-ho, following closely behind, joined Num-sun in confronting Kwon's forces, engaging in a battle until they defeated all the soldiers. Meanwhile, Su-na endured great pain as Ki-soo continued his experiments on her. Eun-ho then led Num-sun and the others to an underground room in an attempt to rescue her subordinates. However, upon arriving, they were shocked to discover that Eun-ho's subordinates had transformed into monsters and were attacking mindlessly. This forced Num-sun and his team to defend themselves and ultimately kill Eun-ho's subordinates. At this point, Eun-ho had not anticipated the extent of Ki-soo's insane experiments in the apartment. Shortly thereafter, Num-sun directed his team to search for Su-na after incapacitating several soldiers through explosions. More of Kwon's troops arrived due to the commotion, and they launched an attack, prompting Num-sun to instruct Eun-ho and Ji-won to continue their mission while he dealt with the soldiers. As they reached the upper floor, Eun-ho, who had already taken out several guards, finally encountered Kwon. Feeling that she had unfinished business against her superior, Eun-ho ordered Ji-won to find Su-na immediately as she intended to confront Sergeant Kwon. Ji-won wasted no time and continued his search for Su-na, while Num-sun, having defeated all the troops on the lower floor, planned to join his friends on the upper floor. Returning to Eun-ho, who was locked in combat with Kwon, it became clear that she was struggling against Kwon's relentless attacks. Seeing Eun-ho's vulnerability, Kwon offered her the chance to rejoin his troops, but Eun-ho firmly rejected and retaliated by attacking Kwon with a knife. Enraged, Kwon responded by brutally beating Eun-ho until she lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Ji-won had successfully located the classroom where Yong-nam was teaching. He held Yong-nam at gunpoint and demanded to know where Soo-na was. As he made his way through the corridor toward the experimentation room, Kwon appeared to be attempting to intercept Ji-won, who had Yong-nam as a hostage. Fortunately, Nam-sun arrived and challenged Kwon to face him, allowing Ji-won to proceed and rescue Soo-na. Inside the experimentation room, Ki-soo began to cough up blood due to the serum he had injected into his own body. In a weakened state, Soo-na, aware of his condition, told Ki-soo that all his efforts would be in vain because he could never bring her daughter back to life. A little later, Ji-won managed to locate the experimentation room with the intention of rescuing Soo-na. Unfortunately, one of Ki-soo's henchmen in the room was able to incapacitate Ji-won by striking him on the head from behind. Realizing that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous, Ki-soo instructed Yong-nam to assist him in placing his daughter's body inside a suitcase so that he could make his escape. In the apartment corridor, Nam-sun was still facing Kwon, who had somehow risen again after nearly being killed by Nam-sun. Understanding that Kwon had been transformed into a zombie as a result of Ki-soo's experiments, Nam-sun forcefully threw Kwon's body into a glass block in the apartment building and proceeded to decapitate the surgeon using the shards of the glass block. In the midst of the chaos, Ki-soo purposely set off a grenade in the experimentation room to eliminate all traces of his research, which tragically took the life of Yong-nam. Ji-won shielded Soo-na from the blast, but Yong-nam didn't survive. Shortly after, Nam-sun entered the experimentation room, where he found Ji-won and Soo-na alive, much to his relief. Meanwhile, Ki-soo found himself in the apartment courtyard, facing the anger of the people whose children had been used as subjects for his experiments. On the other hand, Eun-ho regained consciousness and immediately began searching for Nam-sun and the others who had just exited the experimentation room. Together, they hurriedly looked for Ki-soo, who was indiscriminately attacking people with a long-barreled weapon. Nam-sun attempted to halt Ki-soo's violent actions by firing a warning shot and demanding the doctor's surrender. However, Ki-soo appeared unresponsive to Nam-sun's command, especially after discovering that the container holding his daughter's body had been destroyed. Fueled by rage, Ki-soo reached for the long-barreled weapon once more, intending to kill Nam-sun and the others. But in a swift turn of events, Nam-sun thwarted Ki-soo's plans by shooting the doctor dead, putting an end to the madness. A little while later, things in the apartment began to settle down, and Eun-ho expressed her gratitude to Nam-sun and the others for helping to resolve the issues in the building. She had a vision of turning the apartment into a safe haven for survivors. Meanwhile, Nam-sun, Ji-won, and Soo-na made the decision to go back to Bus District and continue with their lives there. Before heading home, Nam-sun and Ji-won broke the news to Soo-na about Yeon-soo's passing. They accompanied her to her grandmother's grave to pay their respects. As the film concluded, we saw Soo-na back in high spirits, participating in the Bus District market. She was assisting Nam-sun and Ji-won in selling the results of their hunting efforts. Moral lesson from the story: it's better to listen to the warnings of others and not stubbornly pursue experiments that could lead to disaster. Plus, if you ever come across a giant crocodile, it's probably best to leave it alone.